So let us open here with an entirely new capability we added after this tides tutorial was recorded. Hence, you will see the depth and distance icon in your application and in this tutorial segment, but not in the rest of the tutorial that we recorded earlier. So we will describe this capability first. Depth and distance provides a convenient chart mode touchpoint to access two crucial data points. The depth here is the current height of the tide over chart datum. Plus the distance part is to a waypoint if you are in navigation mode, along with the current speed determined time to cover that distance. It also displays this data to the final waypoint if you are navigating a route. The central capability here is the highly beneficial current tide height over chart datum. Let's take a moment to refresh the basics of what we see in the tidal data, what they all precisely mean, and the process involved in calculating the height over chart datum for the tide heights between high and low water. Chart datum is the reference level used on nautical charts to show water depths and serves as the 0 point for the tide height predictions. It approximates the lowest astronomical tide, or lat, and is set so low that the tide will not frequently fall below it. Let us examine this using the Cowes tides with a view to passing the Bramblebank. Touch the menu icon or swipe from the left edge of the screen for the menu, which presents the summary tidal information. And we are looking at the afternoon and evening tides in this case. You can also touch the summary tide details to go to the full tidal details. All presented tidal heights are expressed relative to chart datum and are positive or 0 to avoid ambiguity. The current water depth is determined by adding a local tidal curve to the tide heights. Mark the current time on the horizontal time axis. Draw a vertical line from this time to the tidal curve, and then extend a horizontal line from the intersection point to the height scale. Obtaining the current height of tide is prohibitively involved, especially with unusual tidal curves such as those we have here in the Solent. Worse, it is a critical data point for effective vessel navigation and not a process that can be realistically attended to while the vessel is being handled. To resolve this, we make the calculated height of tide over chart datum available in real time, in the detailed tidal section, and, more importantly, right at your fingertips on the navigation screen. Here, you can view the charted depths and touch depth and distance to immediately see the depth you add to the displayed chart depths for the current height of tide. In addition, a trend arrow indicates if the tide is currently on the rise or ebb, so you know if the trend is favourable or adverse when operating on the margins. The depth and distance option serves a dual purpose by offering additional distance details to waypoints. When navigating to a waypoint, the waypoint's bearing and distance are displayed in navigation mode. Touching depth and distance provides up to 3 additional pieces of information, depending on the navigation situation. When navigating to a single waypoint, the current speed determined time to the waypoint is added to this data. Depth and distance displays this under next waypoint and final waypoint to indicate that the waypoint is the only waypoint or the last remaining in a routing sequence. However, last waypoint provides additional information when sailing a route with 2 or more waypoints. Let's select an already established eOceanic route from the Solent and along the southeast coast of England to illustrate this. This also applies to your custom routes. Once selected, you will see the current speed determined time and the distance to the end waypoint of the route displayed under final waypoint. This is the depth and distance function. eOceanic innovations come from your suggestions, our personal experience, and most remarkably, from this tutorial itself. The following tutorial illustrates how we provide the data and the quick math required to ensure you have sufficient depth to remain afloat at anchor on a falling tide. However, after completing the tutorial and considering it for some time, we realized that we should take care of the mathematics and provide a complete solution by importing your vessel's draft from settings, as you see here for our own shallow survey boat. So you now have all the information calculated in real time in the detailed tidal section, and this will be slightly different to what you will see in the following tutorial. In addition, we take it a step further in calculating the requisite depth for both an ebb tide, as shown later, and flood, where the requisite calculation is for the subsequent low water, just like this. So it does not matter when you happen to be anchoring, on the rise or the fall. All you have to do is look at the minimum sounding required, add a margin for environmental variables, and you will have everything you need to find your spot and let go of the anchor. We have simplified everything down to one easy to remember minimum sounder depth that ensures your vessel's safety. What we're doing here is fixing to the water surface and the movements of the tide. This is particularly helpful in areas that have not benefited from a recent survey or are subject to silting. However, as always, sounding the seabed is crucial to ensure your swing range is over a level patch should the winds and currents shift. Likewise, always add a sensible safety margin to the one number for environmental factors. Moreover, because the sounder is your central tool, it is important to understand how your depth sounder is calibrated when using our data. Let's take a moment to do so. There are three primary calibration methods. Depth sounder position. This configuration uses the factory settings without any offset applied, reading directly from the transducer's location. This is typically forward on the boat's hull, about 30 to 40 centimeters below the waterline. Waterline or water surface. This calibration adds the distance from the transducer to the waterline, providing a true water depth reading. This aligns with nautical charts, estimated tidal heights, and water depths, and is also more useful for measuring anchor scope when the freeboard height is added. Clearance only. This calibration subtracts the distance between the bottom of the keel and the transducer's location, effectively offering a reading from the foot of the keel. The readout displays the minimum water depth needed for the boat to float without touching the bottom. While there is no absolute right or wrong calibration method, knowing how your sounder is calibrated and operating your vessel accordingly is essential. Most boats use the default sounder position as they have never been calibrated. Some mariners prefer a clearance calibration to immediately indicate grounding risk, but this requires offsetting the vessel's draft from all other data points. eOceanic's data aligns with the sounder being calibrated to the vessel's waterline. This creates a single, true, universal water surface reference point that simplifies calculations for tidal heights, charted depths, required anchoring scope, and dialogue with all other parties. Knowing that the data we provide works in this context is essential. We recommend calibrating to the waterline, so you have one universal reference point to which all data adheres, and you precisely know your exact situation at all times. The simplest way to check is to look at your sounder and see if any offset has been applied. If not, it reads from the default sounder position. You can then add the appropriate offset for a waterline calibration. However, another viable approach is to use the default setting and apply it as if it were calibrated to the waterline. The vessel's typical mounting point will then automatically provide a 30 to 40 centimeter positive safety margin for environmental factors or an error in planning. This concludes the primary additions and enhancements to this tutorial. You may notice some minor cosmetic changes, but these will not impact the learning experience. Welcome to the eOceanic Tide tutorial. Tides are an extraordinary seagoing dynamic. Here, efficient passage making and the safe control of a vessel's movement can be challenged, if not almost halted, by the forces of celestial bodies. It is also a place where we can master these forces and safely navigate our way through them via applied science. The moon is the principal driver of the tides, as it appears to pass overhead as we see it from Earth rotating on its axis. Its gravitational effect causes the oceans to pull down and bulge out on both sides of the Earth, creating our two tides. But that is where the uniformity ends when it comes to the norms we are accustomed to back down on Earth. The Moon technically orbits Earth in the same direction as Earth spins on its axis every 27.3 days. But it takes a little more time, 29.5 days, to complete its cycle. This is because Earth also moves around the Sun, requiring the Moon to travel a little further in its path to complete its phases, new moon to new moon. This 29.5 day cycle of the Moon adds 50 minutes to each solar day, making the lunar day 24 hours and 50 minutes. And it is to the lunar day that the tides align, being 50 minutes later each solar day, 12 hours and 25 minutes from high to high, 6 hours and 12 minutes from high to low, or vice versa. Nor are these tidal heights consistent because the Moon's orbit is elliptical, producing above or below average ranges when it's closest or furthest away from Earth. Likewise, when the Sun, Moon and Earth line up, the gravitational pull of the Sun is added to the Moon's to extend these ranges. The result is the large ranging spring tides, the name taken from the German word springen, meaning to jump or burst up, as in springing forth, and the lesser neap tides, named from the Old English word nep, meaning scanty or little, that occur during the Moon's quarter phases when the Sun pull is at right angles to that of the Moon. Although the name spring tides does not relate to the season, the Sun's additive effect is at its strongest when it is over the equator during the March and September equinoxes. These equinoctial spring tides, also popularly known as king tides, have the largest tidal ranges of the year. And as if all of this was not complicated enough, when all of these moving fluids interact with the Earth's shape, its varying ocean depth, funneling and blocking effects of land masses, rivers and estuaries, the tidal heights and horizontal tidal flows vary dramatically. No more so than around the British Isles, two large islands with intervening channels situated between the Atlantic Ocean and the western side of continental Europe. Here, the waters upon which we navigate are in constant motion, sometimes overwhelmingly so, never the same from place to place, day to day, hour to hour. And because the tides are so dynamic and vital to navigation, we made tides central to eOceanic. With eOceanic, you will always know when it is best to navigate safely and efficiently from point A to point B, when you can make your way through tideways or enter rivers or estuaries without running aground. You will be certain that there is enough water to remain afloat at all times. Most of all, you can rest assured that we are going to take care of that applied science for you. Tidal data is simplified and fully optimized for leisure boating. So with a touch or two and a glance, you have the exact information you need at any time. With the eOceanic in the palm of your hand, you will find it easy to be on the right side of the tides. You'll be going with the flow, not against it, and never be left high and dry. We aim to make that moon your best friend. So let's get started. No matter where you happen to be in the application, all that is required to access the latest summary tidal data for a designated location is to swipe from the left side of the screen or touch the menu icon. And when you add charts, you have the vast majority of the information you need from that quick tidal summary on the side menu. When you want more detail, fully optimized for boating, all you need to do is to touch the summary information to access the full tidal detail of the location. But before we look at this, let's show you how you can set the summary tidal information to display the location you want to see. The tidal location for these quick access tides can be designated to be a selected home haven or be automatically detected based on your location. With automatic, the application dynamically displays the nearest available tidal station to you at all times. This would be the normal setting you would use when you're out and about on your vessel. Automatic is the default setting, and you can set the preferred summary tides to be automatic or designated to fixed to a home haven in the settings menu. Let's take an example here. This is what it looks like when in Lime Bay and in automatic mode. It is automatically detecting and displaying the nearest tidal station to my current location to be Exmouth. Swipe from the left side of the screen or touch the menu icon and select Setting. If I scroll down to the Summary Haven panel, I can confirm here that it is set to the default automatic mode. And I can change that here to a Home Haven settings if I choose to. Home Haven is used when you live or work in one place and your vessel is moored in another location. In this case, you might want to be kept appraised of the tides where the vessel is berthed so you can plan your movements around them accordingly. Or you might be bound for this location and want to be kept appraised of the tides you will experience upon arrival. So let's say I'm bound for the Solent, with my intended port of call being Lymington, and I wish to designate that to be my home haven. To select Lymington as a home haven, in the Settings menu, touch the radial dial and then touch the drop-down menu. Here the havens are then listed in order of distance from your current location. Scroll down through the list until you find Lymington and then touch it to select it as the home haven. Once done, you can see the menu has selected this as the home haven and it is displaying Lymington tides now. And once again, if I switch back to automatic, it immediately is back to displaying my nearest tidal station of Exmouth. Once a home haven has been chosen, the location is bookmarked. So when you touch the home haven radial again, it will default to the last selected location for your convenience. But with so many listed havens available, this is a cumbersome way to locate and select a home haven, and there is a much easier way to accomplish this. This is by opening the listed berth within havens, or if your intended location is unlisted, a nearby location. As with our example of Lymington, all we have to do is go to the Havens detail page by search or by touching its icon on charts. When within its Havens listing, simply touch the Home Haven icon that is displayed on the top right-hand side of the display. Once touched, you will see a dialog box asking you to confirm you intend to set it as Home Haven. Touch yes, and Home Haven icon becomes solid to indicate that this is set as the home haven for the summary tide information. You can see this immediately by viewing the displayed tides on the side menu. When you move on, you can simply touch it again to deselect it, and it returns to automatic again by default, displaying my nearest tidal station of Exmouth again. So, as you can see, all that is required is a few simple touches to select a home haven and to return it to automatic once again, and it takes effect immediately. So these are the quick access tides conveniently displayed on the side menu with the option to get a more detailed view, which we will look at shortly. When you simply want to see the tides at a particular haven, they are attached to their listed details. Simply go to the Haven details, either by search or by touching the Haven icon on charts, then open its details and touch tide. Let's find our next haven on the charts this time and pick the lovely Buckler's Hard. Being upriver of the Solent, it has an interesting tidal curve. So I find Buckler's Hard on the chart and touch its pin for just a little under a second to open its toolbox. Then I touch Details to open its detail page. When you select tides from the lower menu, the full information page of the current tides of that haven will be displayed, both the vertical tides at the top and the horizontal flow tides below. So let's take a closer look at the more detailed information. First, let's look at the vertical tide heights that revolve around having enough water to access berths through shallow channels and remain afloat at anchor. So let's create a realistic anchoring example where you have to anchor in the margins, which is typical during high season on the south coast of the UK. When it comes to anchoring, you have almost everything you need from the charts and side menu without even touching the more detailed page. To make our example straightforward, we will choose an anchorage with a normal tidal curve, such as my native Kilmore area here. So in this example, imagine we arrive at the anchorage at high water and we sideswipe to see this information. We have the same height for both highs, 3.1 meters above chart datum, CD, or lowest astronomical tide, lat. The tide summary predicts a low of 1.4 meters over chart datum, or lat, at 2035. So with a draft of 1.6 meters, we have good possibilities. In the event, we have anchored over an area that has a chart depth of 0.6 meters above chart datum. So with some quick math, we can quickly work out that at low water, we will have 2 meters total over chart datum. And with the vessel's draft of 1.6 meters, that provides a clearance of 0.4 meters at the next lowest tide today. So effectively, we have everything we need to anchor from the side menu and the chart. Of course, we could have always gone directly to the full tidal data view, but for this example, we did not. However, as the water is dropping fast, we feel it is best to give it a second pass to reconfirm the original basis for anchoring here. Now we go into the more detailed view. So immediately we see more detailed points at a glance. The tidal curve shape, where we are on it, and the color, which in this case is red, noting we are currently on springs with their extended tidal ranges. We also see the total fall to low is 1.65 meters at 2035. But more importantly, we have the key numbers already dynamically calculated off the tidal curve, which is the remaining fall from the present moment to the tide's lowest point. With this number already calculated, all that is required is a quick sounding. Then subtract the remaining fall from the current depth, and we'll be able to confirm what the actual depth will be at low water. It is simple as that. And should there not be enough water to remain afloat, obliging a move, we can see in the time to low how much time we have to make that move. Likewise, if we have to move and we are back to working the margins, we can check the charted depth in advance against the tidal height over the chart datum. If you're not seeing the charted depth plus the tidal height over the chart datum, some silting has occurred since the last survey. So this number could be very useful when you're straining to find a location to anchor in a busy anchorage. The horizontal tidal flow is also made very simple. Simply scroll down to view the tidal atlases that represent the current tidal flow for the present tidal hour. These are arrowed to illustrate the flow direction, followed by two sets of numbers. The former is the neap rate in knots and decimal knots. The latter, the spring rate. You can drag and pinch to zoom the tidal atlases to better see the area you're interested in. When a flow rate attains or exceeds 3 knots, the arrows are colored red so that they may be more readily noticed. So as we see here, we're on Friday, July 28, and this is noted in the tidal hour informational panel. You can touch the plus or minus to advance to different tidal hours and see when the tides turn. The only limit as to how far you can go forward or backwards is the current year, as the annual data is already downloaded to the application. But future tides may be more easily achieved by selecting an advanced date in the current year for both the vertical and horizontal tides. To choose another date, touch the calendar icon top right. This drops down a calendar showing the current month. Touch plus to advance a month, and I will choose Saturday, August 19th to see what the tides are doing that day. Similarly, if I shift to Sunday, it changes immediately and back again. Likewise, the horizontal flow tidal hour will be reset for the future date, and you can begin to select the tidal hour you are interested in as normal. Returning to the current date can be achieved by touching the View Current Tides button. So that is the full tidal summary page, giving you the key data points with a few touches. The horizontal flow of the tides has a most pronounced effect on routes, which has its own specific tidal facility to help you to optimize these tidal flows. Let's choose a convenient and straightforward route example in the Dalkey Sound Cut. It is nearby, so I can simply find it by opening routes and scrolling to it, as routes are listed by proximity. There are 2 routes here, one outside the islets and one inside, and it's the latter we will use to illustrate this facility. The tides run north-south in line with this cut, and the spring rates attain 2.5 knots. So it can be a grind to make progress against an adverse tide here for non-planing craft. If you go into the Dalkey Sound Cut route and scroll down past the overview detail, we can see that it has these inbuilt timers to help you. These indicate the tidal flow directions and timings, so all the calculations are ready for you at a glance. Say we are northbound and it shows us the tide is currently southbound, adverse, but at its tail end, so the flow will be weak as noted. Thereafter, there is an intervening period of 20 minutes of slack water before the northbound tide commences at 11:20. It is all very straightforward. But imagine if it was a key tide that you want to avail of many hours in advance. You also have the option to pin the countdown timer of the tide you are focused on to the bottom of your screen to keep it top of mind. This can be done by touching the monitor button of the tide you're intended upon. Once attached, it will remain in place while you're using the application for other purposes. Then when you wish to remove it, simply touch the X to close and it will disappear again. Timers are limited at the moment to the routes that are specifically centered around tidal efficiencies. However, as noted in the routes tutorial, we will soon be expanding the use of timers across routes in the application on eOceanic.com. These are intended to provide you with useful additional guidance in passing key headlands and entering estuaries and rivers. So expect to see these more widely available when it might prove useful to you. So that is how you may access tidal data within eOceanic. Tides are complicated, but not so once you have eOceanic in the palm of your hand. With eOceanic, the force may very well be with you. Thank you for taking the time to view this eOceanic video tutorial.